Hi everyone. Today we're not in PanSci studio. We're now at NCU's Space Center. Last week, before we recorded, the world was watching on big or small screens, watching the 4 astronauts of Artemis II safely land in Pacific. This is humanity's first deep space lunar orbit in 50 years. While the whole world cheered for these space heroes were cheered on. Our guest today will be looking with a completely different professional eye to closely monitor these 4 colleagues and the harsh physiological data. Our guest was born in Taipei, Taiwan, a senior NASA core astronaut and an aerospace medical expert. He is also a member of the Artemis team, preparing for future moon landings. He is Dr. Lindgren. Today, we'll discuss from a medical and practical view, when humans leave Earth, what kind of price must be paid? Dr. Lindgren. Last week, these 4 colleagues of yours were hoisted from the sea and are readapting to Earth's 1G gravity. As an experienced astronaut and doctor, please tell us a counterintuitive truth. After spending time in space, what happens in those first hours when the body or brain returns to gravity? What are the physiological dysfunctions we can't see on NASA or Netflix broadcasts?
That's a great question. We find that the body does an amazing job of adjusting, adapting to weightlessness, to microgravity. Really? And so over time, the brain adjusts to the fact that there is no force of gravity acting upon it, or it doesn't sense that gravity vector. And the cardiovascular system adjusts, the bone starts to adjust because they're not constantly being with a force acting on them. And so over time, for the missions that I had the opportunity to be a part of, almost 6 months for both of them, my body is seeking to adjust to that weightless environment. We would call those adjustments almost maladaptive because ultimately we want to come back to Earth. Mm-hmm. These are great adjustments for being in weightlessness, for being in space, but we want to return home. And so we need to maintain our bone strength, our muscle strength, our cardiovascular systems. And so we have countermeasures that we use to maintain our health and fitness for our return home from space. Our Artemis colleagues just did a 10-day mission. Right. My colleagues flew around the moon and came home. 10 days, much less time in weightlessness, so lower concern for those changes, the changes that are taking place. Now, despite that, when they come home, weightlessness is their brains have already started to adapt to being in that weightless environment. So even for those short 10 days, they can feel a little bit dizzy. Their neurovestibular system, our sense of balance, can be disrupted from being in that weightless environment. And so when they first come home, they might feel a little unstable. If they move their head quickly, they might feel a little bit dizzy. But really the recovery is very quick for them. In fact, I saw my friends just a few days after they returned home, and they already were feeling back to normal. For a normal 6-month, for our standard 6-month space station mission, it takes maybe a week and a half for the dizziness, the neurovestibular system to adapt. Almost a month for your body to feel back to normal, all of the muscular aches and pains to go away. And so the different systems of the body take different amount of time to return. But the things that you don't see are probably that the sense of loss of balance and the dizziness. And so when you watch a space station astronaut return, oftentimes when our Russian colleagues return in the Soyuz, they will set them out in chairs outside of the spacecraft, and you will see them keep their heads very still.
Right.
And they might look, if somebody talks to them, they might look, but not move their head, because if they move their head, they start to get dizzy and may feel sick as a result. Oh. But you know, are the astronauts that are watching, your friends that are watching, they're watching you and seeing, oh, is he going to move his head or not? So you might, if you're feeling pretty good, you might purposefully move your head around just to show that you're doing good.
Last week's Artemis II crossing the atmosphere. From an external perspective, it was extremely dangerous outside, nearly 3,000 degrees. And we know this Orion spacecraft actually features a high degree of automation inside the capsule. There are many large touchscreens. This is different from the Apollo program era, the cockpit filled with many physical switches. It's quite different. As a rigorously trained astronaut used to full control, when you sit in such a highly automated spacecraft, hurtling to Earth at hypersonic speed, what kind of psychological changes occur? As vehicle designs rely more on algorithms today, our astronauts now experiencing a shift from absolute control to adapting to a system supervisor role.
That's interesting. You know, even back to the very beginning of the space program, there are things that happen that are too fast for human reaction. And so even in Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and automatic systems and automation that were built in to shut the rocket down or to abort the flight or to launch the capsule off to rescue the crew. That automation has increased over time as our ability to put computers on the spacecraft has improved as well. And so your role the role of the crew member is definitely to monitor the system and make sure that the flight plan is being executed appropriately, but to be ready with the training that we undergo to intervene if necessary. And so to understand how you can participate in controlling the spacecraft if it begins to break down. In the systems that we fly in, we always seek to have a manual mode where the human is not just a passenger, but is a part of the system and is able to provide redundancy to the system, to keep the crew safe and to preserve the mission.
Artemis II, the greatest significance. I think it's humanity's first to cross the Van Allen belt again and enter deep space without Earth's magnetosphere. After the mission ends, we can use these new generation in-cabin sensors and the dosimeters carried by the astronauts to get the first batch in half a century and most timely deep space radiation data in 50 years. I'd ask Dr. Lindgren, which is from your perspective as an aerospace medicine expert, once we have confirmed the true power of this deep space radiation facing future Mars missions, regarding the current physical protective armor, has it already reached some kind of limit? And has the medical community realized we must use biological intervention, such as special cell repair tech, to allow humans to reach Mars alive?
The radiation environment is definitely one of the challenges of long-duration deep space flight. It is not an insurmountable challenge. The primary radiation threat in low Earth orbit is solar particle radiation. As we venture outside of the Earth's magnetosphere and the Van Allen belts, we have more exposure now to galactic cosmic radiation, which is heavier particles that transmit more energy to the cells and can be more destructive. We don't have a lot of experience with the long-term effects of significant exposure to galactic cosmic radiation. So that uncertainty, so we have some understanding of what that represents and the exposures that we can take. And then also large solar flares, so large solar events can expose our astronauts to solar particle radiation. We can shield the solar particle radiation fairly effectively. And so we can build a spacecraft where there is a place where, with given warning, we can advise our astronauts to get into an area where they're more protected. Shielding for galactic cosmic radiation is very difficult. Even our traditional shielding today, when one of these galactic cosmic radiation particles hits the shielding, it actually creates secondary effects and causes other radiation. Effect? So that is, it strikes the shielding, and instead of dissipating energy, it actually causes the shielding to create particles that can strike the human. It is not an insurmountable challenge. The risks increase. Most of our radiation effects are what we would describe as stochastic. So you get a certain amount of radiation, it just increases the probability of developing cancer. It is not a one-for-one effect. And so as we think about going to Mars, one of the primary countermeasures is to actually get there faster. And so developing next generation propulsion technologies are a huge part of getting to the planet faster,
like a nuclear
with less exposure. Yeah. Absolutely. So there are definitely other things out there that we're hoping to design and test. But that is one of the main mitigations for that radiation exposure is to just to reduce the amount of radiation exposure that exists.
So we are not going to biological enhance ourselves.
So
yet?
it's a great point, and there are we want to investigate all possibilities. So better shielding techniques. Are there some undiscovered ways that we can protect our crew from the radiation environment? Faster propulsion, and then pharmaceuticals using biologic agents to help cellular repair and DNA repair. Are there things that can protect the crew's, so pharmaceuticals that can protect the crew from radiation exposure? Those are definitely areas that we want to explore as well.
Yeah, if we can have that kind of medicine created, I guess a lot of people living on Earth will need it too.
And that's one of the benefits. I mean, really the benefits of the challenge of spaceflight. It is challenges that cause us to, obstacles that challenge us to innovate, to figure out ways to get past that challenge. And so this challenge of radiation forces us to innovate, and then we can, the technologies that we develop are then useful for humanity as well.
This time, Artemis II flew to lunar far side. Communication still could maintain a certain degree of smoothness, but let's assume future Mars missions. The communication delay between Earth and the spacecraft could be 40 minutes round trip. So in Taiwan, currently, of course, is actively developing smart medical AI, trying to let AI assist with medical decisions. Let's imagine if on the way to Mars in the future, severe comms delays and total isolation. This environment, if an astronaut experienced a situation requiring emergency surgery, to what extent would NASA be willing to trust a medical AI built into the spacecraft to guide or even perform surgery to cross this threshold of trusting algorithms with lives? What would be the biggest challenge?
It's a great question. There is no doubt that as we venture to Mars, we are going to encounter challenges that we have not had to deal with at this point. We are very good at exploring, at living and working in low Earth orbit. As an example, if we have a vehicle malfunction, if we have an emergency with the spacecraft, or we have a medical emergency that we can't take care of on the space station, we can always get into the spacecraft and return to the Earth. That is our safety. As we venture to Mars, when we do the trans-Martian burn and are on our way to Mars, there's no easy way to come back to the Earth quickly. And so the spacecraft, its systems, environmental control systems, are going to have a reliability that we have not yet achieved, even on the International Space Station. If something breaks on the space station, we can send a spare, or we have spares on the space station, we can send spares up to repair. When we're on the way to Mars, we will have to have figured out what spare parts we need, and if something breaks, we have to have the capability to fix it. And so even the spacecraft itself is going to have a level of redundancy and and reliability that we don't have today. And from a medical perspective, once we get into the Mars domain, as you suggested, the communications latency is up to 20 minutes one way, and so 40 minutes. So a crew member has a medical issue, calls for help. That's 20 minutes to Earth. And that's just the call for help. And so then everybody talks about it, sends a message back, and it's way too much time to deal with a critical issue. And so it either means that we need, from a medical perspective, a physician on board, but what if the physician is the one that gets sick, right? And so some capability, and whether that is an AI-supported clinical decision-making, guidance, an environmental control system that is constantly tracking the crew and notices, oh, that crew member's temperature has been increasing over time, and then that crew member complains, oh, I've got belly pain. The integrated system is able to say the probability that you have appendicitis is this %, and these are the things that we would recommend. That there will need to be some system that we have tested on the Earth that we can then use in space, and that's a critical point. Is everybody is very excited about, well, let's put it in space. There are remote communities that perhaps don't have a doctor nearby, that this is a system that you can actually test on Earth first, make sure that it works, provide care to remote communities that don't have access to healthcare, and then that is now a tested system that we could consider using on a long duration spaceflight like that. we trust but verify. And so putting our trust in an algorithm, putting our trust in an AI system, we need to understand why it's making the decisions that it is. Before we would use it, we have to test it and make sure that it's going to do the things that we expect it to do before we trust it with our crew members' lives.
What's the percentage of trust you have right now for the system you know?
Well, we are thinking about what a system like this would look like in the future, but we have not, implemented anything. I think that our collective experience with AI is that it can be very helpful, but I don't know that anybody wants to trust it with anybody's life right now.
The successful return of Artemis means the testing phase is over. So the lunar plans next will be extensively rolled out. And soon, they plan to build a base at the moon's south pole. Taiwan actually possesses very strong semiconductor capabilities and hardware production. Many companies also want to enter the supply chain. Now that the Artemis program has entered the substantive infrastructure phase, in NASA's blueprint for a country like Taiwan, a tech country with strong hardware capabilities, should focus its R&D efforts on solving which most tedious, most difficult, but most urgently needed system pain points for NASA to make Taiwan's industry an indispensable strategic partner.
My experience with the International Space Station program is one where I have come to appreciate all of the benefits that the International Space Station has produced in terms of science and research over the 25 years that we've had people living and working in space. But the greatest benefit has been that international cooperation piece and being able to leverage the very best that all of our partners can bring to the table to create this amazing vehicle in low Earth orbit, a place where we can conduct science and research to prepare for future missions like going to the moon. As I think to the future, I'm grateful for Taiwan's support of the Artemis Accords and excited about the partnership that Taiwan's incredible economy and high-tech expertise can bring as we partner together as humanity to explore the moon and beyond. And so rather than focusing on a particular area or a bottleneck, I think leveraging Taiwan's strengths as they exist right now is incredibly powerful. Certainly, we are going to need the technological expertise and technological horsepower that Taiwan's industry and economy provide. And I think that those can be of tremendous benefit to this Artemis exploration initiative.
Just a few days ago, the 4 crew members of Artemis II in a space not much larger than an SUV for 10 days returned safely. However, future Mars trips or permanent stays on the moon, the same space, the same people, time could be 2 or 3 years, Earth outside will become an unseen, dim little star, leaving our visible home Earth with no way back. In this deep space chamber with no quit, as time extends, as many sci-fi thrillers have shown, the biggest survival threat is often not hardware failure, but rather the human element. I'm curious how NASA's training system teaches astronauts to handle issues in extreme confined environments, such as potential team conflicts and the problems of mental limits.
That's a great question. The human element is certainly one that we don't want to be the weakest link in this exploration system. Certainly, as we think about Martian exploration and making our way to Mars in that confined capsule, that is a concern. But we have been working hard on the human element for the past 25 years as a part of the space station program, living and working in space in a confined environment with the hazards of space right outside for long periods of time. We've been doing that in the space station for the past 25 years. And as we pivoted to long-duration spaceflight from the 2-week flights of the space shuttle to the 6-month to year-long flights of the space station, making sure that we have astronauts, crew members with the right stuff to do that mission is critically important. And that starts with selection. So choosing the right people. the people who are technologically knowledgeable and bring in expertise to the table, but also people that can work well as a team, who can get along together. And so when I have sat on the board selecting astronauts, I know as a group, we are looking for the very best and brightest that America has to offer. But then we also think, is this somebody that I would want to spend 6 months with on the space station? Is this somebody that I would trust with my life? Because those are two very real elements. And I've had the opportunity to fly with people that I sat on their selection board and was just so grateful, really the intentionality that the selection board brings when we select our astronauts. And then we want to train those crew members, train those astronauts to be good, continue to be good teammates, to be good leaders, to be good followers. And so in addition to selection, then we have training. And so part of our training, one of the tools that we use is a partnership with an organization called National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS. And so we will send our astronauts, if we have a crew, as an example, when we were preparing for my last mission, I made sure that our crew had the opportunity to go do one of these expeditions. Go out into the elements with carrying the food on our back, very harsh conditions, austere environment, bad weather, and have to achieve mission objectives over the course of about 10 days.
Oh.
And so that being in uncomfortable conditions, physically and mentally exhausted, that brings out friction points. And the training is to figure out how do you deal with those and still achieve the mission? How do you express to somebody that something that they're doing is maybe annoying? Or finding out what is it that I do that annoys my teammates. And so establishing good bonds, good communication strategies, and then what we describe as expeditionary behavior. And so that the tenets of that are self-care and team care. And so self-care is making sure that you're doing everything you need to do to be able to accomplish the mission, getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising, preparing for the next day's work, so that when that next day comes, you're prepared to do your part of the mission and not be a drag on the team. And in fact, to do it so well so that you can look around and then execute the team care piece. And that is every day thinking about, what can I do today to be an encouragement to my team, to be helpful to my teammates? And if everybody's doing that, if everybody's taking care of their own piece of the work and looking out for each other, you can't help but have an extraordinary mission. And so those are the things that we look for when we select. Those are the pieces that we train. And when we think about selection and other pieces, adaptability, people can be amazing scientists, amazing pilots, but we want to make sure that we're choosing people that can deal with the situation when things aren't going according to plan, that can just stop and think, okay, this is the challenge, this is the problem, how are we going to fix it? And not worrying about, oh, nothing's going according to plan right now. People that are adaptable, that can adjust to the situation to accomplish the mission. And so adapting to that very challenging environment of being in a small capsule when things aren't going right, and bonding together as a team to figure out how to accomplish the mission.
Do you think newly wedding couples should undergo the same curriculum like you undergo?
Boy, I think before they get married, they should undergo that training.
Not after they get married.
Maybe not after.
Okay.
Like figure out if you're compatible beforehand, and then.
What's the percentage do you expect them to get divorced after the curriculum?
I don't know that I can comment on that.
Yeah, I think it's something that we should practice. Okay, so Dr. Lindgren, my last question is a thought experiment. It's 2030, imagine that, and you are the commander of the lunar getaway. An unprecedented lethal solar storm is imminent, and the station's remaining power can only shield one single module. You face a binary choice. So you have two buttons in front of you. The button A is the science module. It hosts years of placeable deep space samples and medical data, the potential holy grail for curing radiation sickness and saving the lives of all future explorers. That's button A. The button B is the commercial module. It houses the AI mining hub of the tech giant that funds 80% of your station's operation. And losing it, meaning the entire lunar program goes bankrupt and shut down by next year. This is a tug of war between scientific legacy and financial survival. As a commander-in-chief, where do you draw the line, and which button will you push?
Very challenging question. So I'm going to give you a challenging answer. First, I respectfully reject that there are only two choices here.
Okay.
So first, we look for a solution to see if there's a way. Can we actually move the orientation of the spacecraft such that we can shield one and that module shields the other?
Yeah.
So maybe there's a solution there. The second piece is very interesting because oftentimes this question is not answered by the commander of the spacecraft. It is a problem to be answered by the program manager or the mission management authority back on Earth, who understands the larger picture of money and budget versus the science. And we often have flight rules in place for this very reason, that if something like this were to happen, the whole community has already talked about it and already made a decision. So if this happens, they don't have to think about it, they know what answer, and everybody's already agreed. But I understand that this is a challenge for me, and so I can't rely on those answers. I think my answer would be to push button A, understanding that this could represent the end of the budget for the moon program. But what you're describing to me is not just the medical solution that would protect our astronauts from radiation illness and potentially cancer in the future, but a solution that could be a medical revolution for the lives of many people back on Earth. If we are able to deal with radiation issues and potentially provide a solution to cancer back on the Earth, to me that is the clear answer, because that is the point of what we were doing. We were exploring for the benefit of humanity, and so to me that's the right answer.
Thank you, Dr. Lindgren, and see you in space.
谢谢你。
欢迎来到思想实验室，我是国威。思想实验室的 YouTube 会员功能今天起正式上线了，感谢大家一直以来的信任。想邀请最挺我们的你，与我们一起走得更远。有了大家的支持，我们承诺会继续制作更多优质的内容，在未来与大家一起做不同主题的思想实验。欢迎点击下方的加入按钮，与我们一同前行。